Hello, wonderful listeners, and welcome back to the Zarliquan podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Starr, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for yet another episode that promises to inspire, empower, and uplift. Today, we have a truly extraordinary treat in store for you. We're diving deep into the words of innovative education and mental health advocacy with two remarkable women who are making waves in their respective fields. Prepare to be captivated by their stories, their expertise, and their unyielding dedication to creating positive change. We'll be joined by Donna Feilds PhD, a passionate educator based in Spain, whose groundbreaking work in phenomenon-based learning is reshaping the way we approach education. Her insights are a treasure trove for anyone who believes in the power of learning to transform lives. And then we'll introduce you to Lori Vann, MA LPCS, a true visionary who has spent over 2 decades dedicated to helping those who self-harm and their caregivers. Her empathetic approach to mental health is both enlightening and heartwarming, shedding light on the importance of compassion and understanding. So whether you're an avid learner, a supporter of indie authors, or simply seeking inspiration, you're in for a treat. Stay tuned as we delve into their journeys, their wisdom, and their transformative work. But before we get started, remember to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of our podcast that celebrates the magic of storytelling and personal growth. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode and embark on this journey of empowerment and enlightenment. Welcome to the Zarliquan podcast.
Brittany.
Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So you're doing this project that's really, really interesting. What is your goal here?
I noticed self-published authors don't really have a voice, and I want my platform to be the voice.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. Because, I have a podcast, and what I keep saying is that I want to I want a platform to celebrate these gorgeous educational voices. So we're saying the same thing.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, exactly. There's so many, there's so many really valuable stories out there that don't get to be heard. I think this is a very important mission.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous project.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm your advocate here.
Awesome.
Brittany, thank you so much for having me on the platform. I really appreciate it. It's my passion, and that's what I'm doing. I'm from New York originally. I became a teacher in New Mexico. In New Mexico, it was important 20 years ago to speak Spanish. Perhaps it still is. And I moved to Spain thinking, I'll just go for a couple of months, learn Spanish, and go back. And that's not usually how the brain learns languages. You need more time. So 20 years later, I'm still here, but I really like it. And so things are working out well. That's my life in a flash.
I love it. That's a great way to learn Spanish, to move to Spain.
That's right. Yeah, no other choice.
What is phenomenon-based learning, and how does it differ from the traditional methods teachers are typically trained for giving in classes?
Okay, yeah, I love that question because it's what I'm most asked, because I give workshops in phenomenon-based learning, and really just what I say is phenomenon-based learning projects are projects with sparks. And what I mean by that is that a project, a chemistry teacher, for instance, could say, all right, we're going to do a project now. And it really might just be the students making a podcast out of all the information in a unit. Or they might make a presentation out of all the information in a unit. But it's not necessarily cross-curricular. It's probably not multicultural. It probably doesn't give them a lot of agency over the decisions or the information that they're going to use. So that's a project, and that's valuable because at least it isn't teacher-directed and they have to sit there and read and do exercises. It's an improvement. But phenomenon-based learning is what is being used in countries like Finland right now, and people really value anything people in Finland do. And the reason why they chose phenomenon-based learning is because it's a little more organic, it's a little more authentic. If you need to go to school to learn, and not everybody does, there are outside schools, there are schools on boats. I'm doing a whole research project on all the different ways that we can learn as young children up to adults. But phenomenon-based learning in the classroom is a little more authentic. You pick something in the world, you pick an idea, or you pick a concept or something in the news, and you explore it. And the concepts are really interesting. I mean, the social skills are the most important part of project-based learning, because you're going to include the ethic of excellence. In other words, don't just hand in your first project, hand in your best project, hand in your best draft, hand in your best essay, your best, what can I say, podcast, your best work. You have to embed that in the time structure, but that's part of what it is. So there are a lot of other elements.
That sounds like it's just more directed for the students to have a better learning experience, because it's something that they are interested in.
Exactly. We're taking something from the world, and we're taking something that's global, because one of the things I also tell people, that no matter whether I remember to tell you or not, my perspective is your students are living in the fourth industrial revolution, which is technology taking over so many of the blue-collar work, so many of the lower critical thinking types of work, and they can do it better and faster than humans can. Mm-hmm. Fine. Then it's our responsibility to give our students opportunities to develop skills that technology still can't do. And that's what phenomenon-based learning does. You see their eyes light up because all of a sudden they have choices. It's not the teacher telling them what to do all the time. It's a lot about students getting excited about learning because all of a sudden they are they're participating more. It's not a teacher telling them what to do all day.
So you've had an extensive career in education and have worked with various publishers. However, you chose to self-publish this book.
Sure. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of publishers, and I've had really positive experience with all of the publishers I've worked with. So why did I publish this with the publishers? I've tried a lot, and they all know that I keep asking them to publish it. The thing is, with publishers, they are, their numbers. Their numbers are the most important thing to them. So no matter how important methodology is and their best intentions in giving teachers and parents and students the best learning experience, in the end, it has to do with money, and it has to do with serving the masses. And that's not what phenomenon-based learning is. It's a sort of new concept, although this is how we learned, 5,000 years ago, it's sort of authentically. It's something that is still taking a risk by putting it into a book. So I made a decision. I felt that the information I had was really important, and I couldn't wait anymore for a publisher to say yes. So I published it myself. There are 4 volumes, and I'm still writing different volumes. The one you have is the first one. Okay. And I call them volumes just because it's more than a chapter, less than a book, but has a lot of information.
Well, considering your expertise in empowering students' learning experiences, what key takeaways do you hope listeners will get?
I guess the most part is that we need to give students more agency. And that means, to me, letting them make more decisions, letting them feel more a part of their learning experience. Stop trying to dictate what's going to happen, because it makes us nervous and it makes them more passive. So again, part of the fourth industrial revolution means that we need to really accept the fact that our students are going to go out in the world, and unless they have confidence in what they do, unless they know what their personal and unique skills are, unless they have the opportunity to develop those unique skills, then technology is going to be much more valuable and much more effective. So I guess what I want people to take away is that these volumes, this focus on phenomenon-based learning, is to help students have a future that they're going to be proud of.
That's beautiful.
With self-publishing, I think we need to make a decision. Is this important enough for me to take a chance on putting all my heart and soul into a book and self-publishing it? It may not get the same audience immediately as it would with a publisher. And on the other side, I know that when I press publish, it's exactly how I want it to look. It's exactly how I want it structured. Yeah. It's the message that I feel is important to send out. So there are positives and challenges on both sides. And for me, I think the challenges are worth it. I had the opportunity, someone offered to sell the book for me on his site, and he has tens and thousands of viewers. Mm-hmm. He was going to take a big percentage of the book, and it wasn't so much that he was going to take a big percentage of it I didn't see a really substantial reason, but because I didn't see that the people who would have bought it really needed it. And I want the people who look at the book, appreciate what it's about, and need it. Mm-hmm. So that's one other reason why I really wanted to do it this way.
In your book, you discuss creating an organic learning environment by bringing real-world phenomenon into the classroom. Can you share an example of how this approach has transformed your students' learning experience?
Sure, yeah. And it's not so much mine, but the teachers I work with, because I was in the classroom for about 20 years, and for the past 10 years, I've been a teacher trainer. So most of the phenomenon-based learning has been working with teachers and getting feedback from them about their students. And I guess one of my favorite ones is when I was working in Mexico. This is when I first developed the structure that I have that's now in the book. There's one incredible team of teachers, because phenomenon-based learning, again, is interdisciplinary. And so it's meant so that a whole range of teachers can participate in the same project. And we had an art teacher, and we had a chemistry teacher, and a math teacher, and a physical education teacher, and there were more. And they developed a project about art and migration. And the driving question leading into it was so simple and yet so powerful. And it was, where do art and migration meet? Oh. And when I was working with them, I sat down with them and I said, okay, I think we need to read the question. And they all looked at me kind of upset, frustrated, a little bit disappointed. And I was with them for about an hour. And in the end, we left it exactly the same, because they explained to me what they wanted to do. And it was perfect. And it involved all of the disciplines in the school. And your question was, how did it affect the students? Mm-hmm. They were so proud of themselves. Aww. They had so much agency in how they would address the question and develop the question. And the final tasks they did were just so brilliant. But again, your question is so important, because how did it affect them? You could see them standing straighter in the end, presenting it, and they were really proud. They were really excited to explain the whole thing, and the teachers were over the moon. So it's the students, and it's also the teachers realizing that they had given their students an incredible opportunity. So yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's actually one of the biggest things in becoming an adult is confidence, actually. So what you're saying is that your learning experience actually builds confidence for children, which will take them much further in life if they have confidence in their skills. That's amazing.
Yeah, so true, because what is it going to do for them if they can complete 50 math problems, perfectly? In the end, it's not going to help them in the real world if the math problems that they're facing them have nothing to do with what they've learned in the classroom. I'm sort of making myself clear.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, a huge issue with learning today. That's one of the biggest complaints I've heard. Okay, so you've worked as a teacher in multiple settings and in multiple countries. How have these diverse experiences shaped your perspective on education and learning methodologies?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question as well. I mean, these are wonderful questions. I guess for the most part, I was raised to travel, and I was raised to try to look at people through different perspectives. And I didn't realize till I became a teacher trainer, I think, and really started moving around the world in a professional sense, that I still held on to a lot of prejudices about the American culture. And I'm not someone who purports America as the best. Absolutely not. We all have positives and negatives in each country. But I guess what I've really learned is that we need to lose our judgment of everything. Look at people, look for the positives first. If we can look at someone and find anything positive about them, even if sort of their vibration makes us cringe for some reason, we will find a connection. And that is the most important thing think we need to do in this world, is find a connection, lose the judgment, and appreciate people for what they can do instead of what they may not be doing. And that's in an educational setting and in any setting.
I agree. That's in every setting. I think we all need to, because there is, if we stop long enough, you will find that you do have something in common with every person you meet, and that changes the way you relate to them, which would make our world so much of a better place.
Oh my goodness, yes. And we need to model that. I mean, we need to model it for our kids and for the youth, and I don't have children, so my focus is modeling that for teachers who are going to model it for their students.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, because our children definitely need that. They need to be open-minded and realize that we all have a lot more in common than we don't.
That's very well said. Yeah.
So phenomenon-based learning is gaining traction globally. What challenges do educators commonly face when implementing this approach, and how can they overcome these challenges?
Okay, well, that's an easy one. Most teachers do not have a lot of freedom. Most teachers have a curriculum and curricular points, and they've got to check them off, and they have a lot of pressure. Everyone, I mean, all over the world, they have a lot of pressure to appease administrators, parents, and a lot of students at this point. And they really reject the idea of even going off in any kind of variety. So when you say, what's the big challenge about phenomenon-based learning? Sometimes I say, just start with an inquiry question. Just start with a driving question to make whatever you're going to do and whatever you usually do a little more interesting. And just taking the time, maybe it's a half an hour, one class session, to introduce a driving question makes them so nervous that it's not a really positive experience for them or for the students. But it comes down to administrators being a little more open. And I'm really fortunate to work with schools whose administrators, obviously, if they've hired me, then they're more open-minded. And I just wish there were there were more schools who are open-minded and more supportive about alternative ways to present information so that students actually like going into the classroom.
That's important. Do you find that it's less the teachers, it's more the school boards that have trouble?
I guess that really just depends. My experience, because I work more with the teachers, I definitely work with the administrators, but in my case, the administrators are the ones who want to implement these structures, and it's the teachers who are trained in very traditional ways. And in Spain, it's very, very traditional, very traditional. There's a lot of memorization. There's a lot of teacher talking. But I mean, in the States, it's the same way. My niece is in her 20s, and she told me that she was in a very teacher-centered classroom. So even though there's more creativity in general in the States, there's still a lot of teacher-directed dynamics. But you're asking me whether it's the school board or the teachers. I would say sometimes it's a school board who reject anything new, but there are some places where the school board or the administrators do accept it, and trying to retrain teachers is not easy. A lot of teachers are frustrated, exhausted, disappointed, overworked. It's a very complicated situation, and thank God for teachers who are dedicated and will do it anyway, even if they feel all those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you describe your journey from being a teacher to becoming an author and workshop facilitator? How do these roles intersect and complement each other?
Interesting. I don't know if there was a big transition into being an author. I just realized when I was in the classroom, I love teaching. Love it. I'm a teacher first, no matter what. And I realized that I had something to say. And so I started putting down on paper and wrote articles, and that brought me to the attention of publishers. So I started working with publishers, and they asked me to start doing workshops, and so I did. And what's the other transition that you mentioned? Sorry about that.
How do the roles intersect and complement each other?
Okay. Well done. Yeah, I think for me, when I write something down, I get a lot more clarity about it. So if I wrote an article, then I was more clear about what I needed to do in the classroom. Once I started writing things for publishers and doing workshops, they were wonderful about giving me feedback. And so I became more clear about what teachers needed in a workshop and what they needed to see before they would accept an idea. So there's a lot of intersections. I really like that question, because you're not just an author. You need to verbalize, you need to negotiate with yourself, you need to run ideas by someone else. And in education, if you don't sort of feel out teachers, other teachers, and how they react to different material, different activities, then all you've done is write down how activities work for you. And that's really personal and probably won't help a lot of teachers. It'll help someone else like you.
Right.
And we're all very different.
Yes. That's true. Let's see. Your bio mentions living in both coastal and mountainous areas along with your furry companions. How do your surroundings and pets contribute to your creativity and approach to education? Interesting. I would say that's very personal, and I say that only because in my case, I lived in Manhattan. I grew up in New York and in the suburbs, 30 miles north of New York, but I lived in Manhattan, and Manhattan is pretty much 24-hour noise. Yeah. And if you need that, then you stay in Manhattan. And I lived there for about a decade, and I realized, no, this isn't good for me. I needed somewhere quiet. Nice. So New Mexico was quiet. When I came to Spain, I sought out the beach first, and the beach is where you go in the summer. So I had 10 months of quiet, and then realized even those 2 months were too much for me, so I moved up in the mountains, and it's heaven. For me, I need quiet, I need nature, listening to just silence, and my animals, again, I have 6 cats from the street who come in and eat and then leave and go off on their lives. And I really like that, part of their lives, but they control themselves. And pretty much it's a dynamic that I love in the classroom. I want the students to come in, feel that I'm supporting them, that I'm giving them exactly what they need, and then they go off and use that information and those skills in whatever they want to do. That's awesome. So, you're giving them the tools to be able to live life on their own terms. That's beautiful.
Very well said. Very well said.
That's
yes.
Beautiful. So you've been involved in empowering students to become comfortable in multicultural situations. Could you share some strategies that educators can use to foster cultural inclusivity and diversity in their classrooms?
Yeah, that's so important. And especially the more I travel, the more I realize how we can make choices in the classroom unconsciously offending some of our students. We don't mean to, and yet we do. And I think all teachers need to do is look at the images that you're using. Are you using only white people? Are you using only boys? Are you using only athletic-looking people? What we need to really reflect on what we're doing, take a step back and not judge ourselves, just look at it. We need to make sure that we're not using just cultural expressions on one side. We need to be very clear that there are a lot of different gender issues going on now. Whether students know it themselves, they're going through it. And the studies show now that at 3 years old, a lot of children know that they're different. So we just need to be a little more aware, open-minded. Again, try to create conversations, be very open about differences. And that can be through, again, images, our language. And one thing my teacher told me to do when I was becoming a teacher, and I suggest this to everyone else because it's so powerful, is simply put, when I became a teacher, we didn't have cell phones, but put a cell phone in a corner of the room, tape yourself, not to show anyone else, just look at it yourself. Watch yourself. Are you speaking to the right side of the room more? Are you walking around? Are you staying in one place? Are you speaking clearly enough? Just observe yourself and say, how could I engage more students? What could I say that might be a little light in today? How could I make the students feel like they're more valuable in my classroom? We just need to be more reflective. And that's very powerful.
That's a really good tip, actually, to record yourself and see how you're behaving. Because sometimes we don't accurately see ourselves. So
that's right. No, we don't.
Is really good to, that's really great. And also, you know what?
Yeah.
Just getting to where the children are so you can help them. Your job, your role is a support role to help them flourish in their own bodies.
That's very important. When a teacher goes into the room and stands in front of the room, it means that all knowledge is in the front of the room. It's not at your desk, it's with me. And so just moving around the room gives students a subconscious message that knowledge is fluid and knowledge is closer to me. I don't have to look at the board or ask the teacher for answers. I might have it very near me.
Okay, what would you like listeners to take away from this chat? If you could highlight one ideology or either about a topic or a book from your book or self-publishing, what would you?
Okay, well, I love this because it actually does appear in the book, and I rephrase it sometimes and play with it, but essentially what I love people to know about phenomenon-based learning and my perspective on education is that it's not our job to create a learning environment that reinforces the limits that our students have about themselves. Our job, which is so much more fun, is to create a learning environment in which our students realize that their possibilities are limitless. Yeah. And just saying that, my heart opens because I think that's the biggest gift we can give to our students and children is help them feel that they have all the possibilities in the world. They just need to find ways to achieve their dreams.
Awesome. Okay, so how can teachers or administrators get a hold of your book and implement these ideas at their school?
Well, the book is now appearing on your site, which is incredible. I'm going to support you as much as I can because I really appreciate this. They can go to my scaffoldingmagic.com site. I have the book there as well.
And we will have that link on the site too.
Right. Okay. So that's really the easiest way. I used to have it on a self-publishing site, and I wasn't very happy with how they operated, which is why I was so attracted to your initiative here. And so if you have the link on the site, that's how they can find me, and I'd be more than happy to talk to them about all of this. Well, I really believe it. And I do what I feel like I can to make this happen. It's very idealistic, and yet, when it happens, it is absolutely gorgeous. So I just really appreciate you asking me all these questions, you coming up with such intelligent and thoughtful questions, and the whole idea of supporting self-publishers. Brittany, is just beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and have a beautiful day in Spain with all your animals.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of the Zarlaquan podcast. If you're an indie author with a unique story to share or a self-development leader with insights to inspire, we invite you to be part of our show. Together, let's amplify your voice and create a platform for growth. And to all of you passionate readers and seekers of personal development, don't miss out on the enriching content we offer at Zarlaquan.com. Join the community today to explore captivating indie books, discover self-development resources, and be the first to know about our latest updates. Remember to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss a beat. Let's journey together towards empowerment and literary inspiration. Visit Zarlaquan.com now.
Grew up pretty much from preschool up through college in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then did my schooling out in Southern California.
Okay.
So did the undergrad at Pepperdine and graduate at Chapman.
Nice.
And then moved back to Texas and been here since 98 on the second stretch of it. So, yeah, pretty much my life has been in Texas with just, some years here and there.
So when did you found NSSI?
I founded the Institute for Self-Injury, I believe it was February of 2021.
Okay.
And it came from speaking with one of my business coaches, and I was going over all these resources I had created over the 20-something years, and we were talking about websites, and he said, well, for all the stuff that you're doing, why don't you just separate it out from the rest of your businesses, from the other pieces, because it can become overwhelming on a website.
Yeah.
And it says, you've done enough, you have enough stuff, just make it an institute. And I was like, I can do that? And he's like, yes. And so I Googled it and I looked up the definition. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, what I'm doing qualifies under that definition. So that's how it was officially launched. Thankfully, coaching helped out with, and and my goal is to continue its efforts to become even more internationally known, whether it's just not even so much about the Institute, just the behavior itself and the resources that are available.
Right, to help people. Can you tell us what got you into the field of self-injury?
I honestly stumbled upon it when I was a counseling intern in 99 or 2000. And I had a client in my office, and I could see the marks on their arms. And in my brain, I'm going, they didn't really cover this in graduate school. And it wasn't talked about then. There was one group that was very active and had a lot of resources. And thankfully, they were there because I received some trainings from them, pulled some resources. But there wasn't a ton available at that period, and so I got what I could, and one person became two in a very short period of time, and then became fully licensed, was working on a inpatient psychiatric hospital in the adult unit, and I discovered adults that were doing it, and that sort of blew out the whole perception that it's just a teenager thing, because these were adults in their 30s and 40s participating in it. And then it just sort of carried on from there. I was really within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I was one of the very, very few people that were providing training events on it, having discussions, and trying to bring awareness to the behavior.
This is a very difficult topic to approach for anyone. So how do you approach that topic if you're just a layperson? Like, what if this is someone that you care about in your family? How do you talk to them about, let's get you help?
That's where I had started a couple of resources there's a caregivers support group that I started so that they could have a safe place to go to, where to be in any of the groups that I do, they are exclusively for self-injury. Because one of the problems that arises is how you address and how you deal and talk about self-injury is different than other behaviors that aren't recommended as coping skills. And there is more of a stigma with self-injury than I would say other addictive behaviors out there. We've come a long way in discussions about substance misuse and abuse, and that we more readily talk about eating disorders. We're getting there. There's still some stigma that goes with it, but I would say we're still further along in that discussion and resources than we are with self-injury. And I think it's just the part of, it's so hard for people to comprehend intentionally harming yourself. And there's a lot of negative words that go with it and statements of you must be crazy to do that, and that doesn't help. And so then you have caregivers that say their loved one's doing this, and they feel the stigma is too, because people don't understand, or people judge them and go, well, you must be a bad parent.
Oh, right.
You know, what did you do to mess up your kid so your kid does that? So parents feel a lot of shame with it, or embarrassment, and they feel like they can't talk to other parents, because I have absolutely had these situations where they will talk with other parents, and then all of a sudden those parents no longer allow their kids to hang out with that original parent's kids.
Right.
So now it's more of a punishment. And so that's where I started those caregivers groups, and wrote the first of the 4 books on self-injury of a caregiver's guide, so they would have that resource to better understand what's going on, how to approach it, and the different videos that I filmed on the YouTube channel, because I have a dedicated self-injury playlist on my Lori Vann LPCS YouTube channel. So there's a dedicated playlist on self-injury that answers a lot of these questions for caregivers out there, and how to start that conversation.
So you did write a caregiver's guide to self-injury, and that's a valuable resource. What motivated you to write that?
It started from a couple of places, actually. I had given a lot of presentations at that time, and I noticed there were certain questions that just kept coming up repeatedly, and thought, well, this helps that situation, because now I'm going to answer a lot of these common questions and get it out to the public to spread awareness. It was also the thought of, I know that there are going to be caregivers that either aren't going to come to the groups for one reason or another, and when they are in that spot of, oh my gosh, I just found out my kid is doing this, they're going to have a lot of emotions that go with it, and they need to have a reliable resource to be able to go to that particular chapter, that section, read what they need to get from it, and then proceed. And I wrote the book very much with that mindset of, if someone has to have this book and it's a caregiver, they're probably going to pick it up when there's a lot of emotion going on, and they need something that's very direct, very boom, boom, boom. This is your guide to get through the situation. And prior to me writing it, I didn't really find any books out there that were written in that tone. Right. That a lot of them were geared a lot more towards counselors, or some of them just the terminology and what they were putting out there I found concerning.
Oh, okay. So, well, you putting because you have more than this book, right? Haven't you done more?
Yes.
Yeah. But you putting all of this out there really helps lessen the shame, I would think, to let people know you're not alone. This is an issue that many people are dealing with. And I think that's a huge thing for people.
It is. It's not just for those individuals that engage in the behavior that very much feel alone, but also, yes, there are caregivers who also feel very alone in the process. And that's where I rolled out more of the social media resources. So there's a private Facebook group that I created called NSSI, and then I spell it out of Non Suicidal Self-injury, Prevent, Educate, Aware. I always get the wording of that a little bit turned around, but it's the only one on Facebook like it.
Okay.
And it's truly international. There are over 450 members of it, if I remember that correctly. And I have individuals from literally all over the world that are a part of it, from Australia, Africa, different European countries, Canada, Asian countries, literally like all over the world, Middle East, that have joined that group. And it's a mix of individuals that engage in the behavior, and it's also a mix of some counselors throughout other parts of the U.S. and the world that want more information on the topic, or to be able to just assist those that may be struggling. And then I also have caregivers that are part of that group, so that they can ask questions or find out, well, what's a updated article, or maybe a video that I filmed for them on a certain topic.
So really, you have started a movement for people. That's amazing. It's very much needed, I would say. Can you provide an overview of the different reasons people might engage in self-injury, like you mentioned in your book?
Yes, I've chronicled well over 30 different reasons why people self-harm, and some of them have an overlap. They're very similar in nature, like stressed and overwhelmed. There's some nuances between those two words, but I always wanted to be understanding and give credit to whatever reason someone gave. I wanted to acknowledge each and every reason that they gave. And so, while some of them, there's a lot of similarities, I did want to honor the differences in the nuances between them. Some of the more common reasons are going to be, well, I would say there's the guilt punishment factor of they regret something that they did, and so they take it out themselves. We actually have movies, mainstream movies that depict that same phenomena. And I'll note, I have nothing against the whole Harry Potter franchise. I mean, I've watched all of the movies, but it is concerning that there is a character in Harry Potter, a non-human character, elf, that when he makes a mistake, you see him slapping himself. You see him burning himself, saying bad, bad Dobby, and doing that punishment. Like, well, that's self-injury.
Right.
Individuals will punish themselves, and that's just one of, there are many, many references throughout the media. Hollywood has done its part to spread this issue, this behavior. And that's one that arises, the guilt punishment factor. Anger is another one, and depends how you were socialized. Oftentimes, and it tends to be females, are told to stuff their anger. Keep it quiet. Little girls are all sugar and spice and everything nice, and women that express anger oftentimes are called very, very derogatory names.
Right.
And so females, I think, have more of a tendency to stuff it. Well, the anger has to go somewhere. It has to be released. So they take it out on themselves versus the person that it should be addressed with. Often another one, and this one probably isn't too surprising, the sadness and depression piece of it. They're sad. There's a lot of emotion that's trapped inside, and they're looking for that, which leads into the number one reason of that escape. It's a release, because honestly, the emotional pain becomes so bad, it's easier to deal with the physical pain. It's a distraction. It's a chemical release because you do have an endorphin rush that goes with it. It's a way to ground yourself in a physical and psychological sense. So that is by far the number one reason I've received is it's a release. It's an escape.
Wow. Okay. Well, caregivers often face challenges in supporting loved ones, especially dealing with self-injury. Can you share some of the most important do's and don'ts for caregivers?
Yes, and this would apply to professionals too that I've encountered who are not educated in this behavior, which to me seems a little bit unexcusable given that lifetime risk in the United States is at least 30%. But unfortunately, there are professionals who are not educated in dealing with this, and to me that's a liability issue. And also goes to parents or anyone seeking counseling need to ask questions in what kind of training that professional has had in this behavior to identify it and to treat it. But some of the do's and don'ts, one of the big ones is to avoid saying, well, just don't do it. Just stop it. because I can tell you how poorly that comes across to the individual.
Right.
And in essence, they tune you out at that point. They really do. They just shut you out and go, you so do not understand what I'm going through. And in their opinion, that's one of the most moronic things someone could tell them, because they're like, yeah, wow, thanks. That's super helpful, because
Right.
it's really that easy.
Right. If it were that easy, obviously I wouldn't do it anymore.
Precisely.
Right.
But and I understand, I want to preface that I understand why caregivers say it and why even professionals say it. It comes from a place of panic or anxiety,
Fear.
or overwhelmed, and they want to say something and they don't know what else to say, so they say that with good intentions.
Right.
It's just good intentions don't come across that way to the person engaging in the behavior.
Right.
So that would be a prime one. Another one is going to be, don't punish the behavior. The person is already struggling, oftentimes with low self-esteem, low self-worth. They're already beating themselves up, sometimes literally and figuratively. So to punish the behavior isn't going to stop the behavior. It's just going to reinforce all the negative self-talk they have going on in their head. And they also will become more creative in their methodology, so that if it's the, okay, I'm going to get busted because my parents doing body checks, well, I'm just going to find more creative ways to injure that are easily more dismissible as an accident, or I can cover up a lot more. And whenever people get secretive about this behavior, that becomes an even higher risk factor of damage being done and the behavior becoming even more ingrained. And I guess the final one is to go on the to-do side, is to sit and listen. Listen more than you speak. Allow them to share, but don't interrogate them. Don't ask 20 questions, but to listen, and then to say, okay, can I ask a question, or can I provide you feedback? And that's a tip not just in self-injury, that's a communication tip across the board for anyone.
Right.
But those are some of 3 quick ones out of the 17.
Yeah. You've given over 110 talks on this topic and worked with hundreds of individuals. Can you share a memorable success story or a lesson you've learned from your interactions?
I can provide 2. The lesson, the quick one, is that while there's oftentimes similarities between individuals that engage in the behavior, you must treat each and every situation and person differently. That even each time someone engages in self-harm, it could be for a completely different reason. And you need to assess it each and every time and not make an assumption that, oh, well, this is the reason they're doing it, because that may not be true. And then for a memorable success story, and there are several, but one of the more challenging cases I had was someone that it truly was addictive. It was ingrained, and we were dealing with multiple diagnoses. It wasn't just depression by itself or singular anxiety. It was probably about 4 diagnoses, at least. One part was major depression with psychotic tendencies or psychotic symptoms with it, and then multiple anxiety disorders, social anxiety. If I remember correctly, there's panic disorder with it, maybe some OCD. There's also eating disordered behavior that was present. And so it was a whole bunch, and trying to figure out which one do you address first, because there's also quite a bit of suicidal thoughts with it too, a lot of suicidology. And there were many times it felt like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back on some occasions. But with time and with patience and just that consistency, they recovered from self-injury, and they recovered from the vast majority of the diagnoses that they had. So they were a huge success story. They were able to finish high school. They were able to go to a trade school and learn a trade and become employed. And I mean, it was great.
That's amazing.
And it was a privilege to be a part of that process.
I bet. That's amazing. NSSI, which you founded, is a significant initiative. Can you tell us more about its goals and activities?
Goal-wise, of course, is to continue to spread the awareness. Definitely reaching out more into the international community, because my understanding is there's just not a lot of resources for what the Institute uniquely provides between the books that are written and the training events that are provided, but the support groups, the exclusively self-injury support groups, mean that you have to have a history to be a part of it. There are a lot of support groups out there, but they are not exclusively that, and that can be problematic, and it's definitely a major pet peeve I have with treatment centers in the United States, is because, with the exception of one, none of them have an exclusive self-injury track. And so those individuals get put into the general population with everyone else. And it's not the same. There are nuances and very important things and safeguards and liabilities and things that have to be addressed. So it's my continued goal to try to educate treatment centers and for the Institute to get a treatment center to take on an exclusive track and be totally unique within the United States. And in that sense, other than the SAFE program that's the original, but being something that's residential and something that is overnight stay, that's for tweens and teenagers.
Okay.
But yeah, I have one last book that I want to write on self-injury, and it's on the to-do list. And I figure 5 is a good stopping point at that point. And yeah, it's really just trying to turn the tide. And just like we have a lot of awareness for suicide prevention and intervention, I want the same level to be there for self-injury, because self-injury quite frequently is the precursor to suicide.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, most of your work seems to revolve around self-development or personal growth. How do you see the connection between self-injury recovery and personal growth?
It's a critical piece of it. Self-injury or eating disorders or substance misuse, for that matter, or lots of behaviors, they're all a symptom. You have to get to the core of it, the root system of what created the need for those behaviors in the first place. And that core applies to every single person. It doesn't matter what their coping skill is. Every single person needs to stop and really assess, are there certain core issues in place? Are there certain deficiencies there that need to be addressed? Because those influence the boundaries that you set in personal, academic, spiritual, financial, professional life. And if you have poor boundaries, then that's where you set up the problem of symptoms developing of anxiety, depression, anger, all those things. And then it's those symptoms that have to have a release with the behaviors.
Oh, wow. So boundaries make everything else possible.
It is a major factor, but you have to go below the boundaries to say, but what are your beliefs that you have about yourself and about others? Because those beliefs 100% influence the boundaries that you set.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So how do you envision a community like Zarlaquan benefiting from your insights into self-development and personal growth?
Well, obviously there's the educational piece, that just bringing awareness to any community about the self-injury epidemic, and it is truly an epidemic by the numbers that we see. because everyone knows someone, even someone that goes, well, I don't have kids, I don't have grandkids, this doesn't apply. It's like, but adults do it too. Right. And you may have a coworker that does this. It's not an if you come across someone that's engaged in it, it's a when. Mm-hmm. So there's just that piece of it. Everyone can benefit from looking at their own life story, can look at, you know what, are there some things that I could improve in the boundaries that I set? Are there some areas that I could maybe tweak to increase that confidence level, to improve the relationships that I find myself in? Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of a bigger piece there. But it's, you know, everyone also knows someone. So someone could be in your community connected into a school district, and they go, you know what? This is the information my school district needs to have. Or they have a primary care doctor, and they're like, you know what? I want to make sure my primary care doctor or my psychiatrist or my religious organization is aware of this problem, because they're on the front lines. They need to know.
So what made you self-publish these books instead of getting them traditionally published?
It was a time frame, and just wanting to have some of the control piece of it. That sometimes when you go with major publishers, they want to change things too much, and this is a very challenging, difficult topic, and I didn't want it to be watered down. I didn't want it to be held up in a long process of negotiations over a contract or agreement, or have a publishing company retain the rights, because I knew that the book would need to be updated at some point. And knowing that this is a very niche book, that some of the big houses might go, well, you didn't sell enough copies of the first edition, so we don't want to try to come out with a revised edition. So a lot of it was really just on the literary control piece of it, because it is a difficult message and not something that a lot of mainstream media would want to deal with.
That makes sense. This is a very hard topic, but I think it's a very important one that people do need to be aware of. Is there anything that you would like to leave the audience with today?
That whether it's with self-injury or it's another maybe addictive behavior, to know that there are resources out there. There is always hope. There is help that's available. I'm not the only group out there that tries to spread information about self-injury, and that if someone needs more referrals, if they have questions about this particular behavior, or maybe things related to it, like perfectionism, that's another expert area I have, then they can feel free to reach out to me, to email me, to contact me through the websites or through the social media outlets that the Institute has, and I'll answer the questions to the best of my ability.
Wonderful. We will also have all those links on Zarliquan on your profile for Lori Vann. So thank you for being with us today. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of the Zarliquan podcast. If you're an indie author with a unique story to share, or a self-development leader with insights to inspire, we invite you to be part of our show. Together, let's amplify your voice and create a platform for growth. And to all of you passionate readers and seekers of personal development, don't miss out on the enriching content we offer at Zarliquan.com. Join the community today to explore captivating indie books, discover self-development resources, and be the first to know about our latest updates. Remember to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss a beat. Let's journey together towards empowerment and literary inspiration. Visit Zarliquan.com now.